The conversation continues. Yesterday, former President Trump convicted on all 34 charges pending an appeal. He made his statements this morning, and I had a conversation yesterday afternoon with former member of Congress, former gubernatorial candidate Matt Salmon. He joins me in studio now. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, it's good to be here.
As
I
told you,
we're under different circumstances.
Yeah, and I told you on the phone yesterday, I needed some time. The overwhelming feeling I've had about this all afternoon yesterday, I can't describe it as any other way than sad. I don't, and it's not about Donald Trump, the person. It's just about where the country is.
Where the country's at. And for me, Mike, it's more than just about this Donald Trump case. One of the things that you've been talking about a lot, and Stan Barnes was kind of quoted in that direction, saying that there's such a divide in the country. We've got to do some healing. We have got to do some coming together. This tribal mentality right now in the United States where, half the people in the country hate the other half of the country. There's an adage in the Bible that said a house divided against itself cannot stand. We've got to get beyond this.
But do you think, is it the way most people feel, or is it the people that we've put in positions of authority that feel that way? And the reason why I'm asking is this. If you and I disagree on something, at least from my perspective, it's my favorite part of the conversation because I know I'm going to learn something from you. You may not change my mind, but if we just agree all the time, it's boring. And I think whether it's you go to a sporting event, you love to razz the other fans and they razz you back, their disagreement sometimes is an enjoyable thing and necessary.
Right.
But we've gotten to a point now that when someone disagrees with us,
they're bad. They're evil.
They're evil. They've gone from wrong to evil.
To evil.
And so
and they should be extinguished. I mean, the kind of rhetoric that's out there right now, it's not healthy.
Well, the analogy is you go to a Cardinals game, and when they're playing a rival like the 49ers, or they're playing there's those of us that would sit in the stands and have fun with each other.
Sure.
And there's others that you'd watch them fighting in the seats.
Right. People that take it to extremes. And no, I don't believe it's just the people that get elected. They're just responding to the people that elect them.
But is it the people that are saying we've got to have, you were someone that was known for disagreement. You stood your ground, the Freedom Caucus, you stood up to, but you didn't lose the respect of other people.
Well, I think that there's an old adage that always meant something to me. You can disagree without being disagreeable.
But do you believe that we've gotten to a point where either people like you have walked away or have been pushed away?
Probably some of both. I mean, right now, politics is a blood sport, and it's not. And honestly, the campaign and the primary is far dirtier, generally, than the general election, because you believe a lot of the same things, or at least you're supposed to believe a lot of the same things. So you capitalize on little personality flaws, and you're not a good person, and this is why, and you did this back in 1964, and and it gets almost ridiculous.
I know that I don't know if you can laugh about it now. Maybe you can. I laugh about it because I know you. The fact that someone accused you of being a Chinese spy,
right?
I giggled at that.
Chinese spy, and that I was okay with special needs kids getting raped.
But do you sit back after it's over and kind of laugh at the fact that
you have to?
Okay,
you have to.
So let's talk about what happened yesterday, because when you see how it's divided, you've got the Trump supporters that crashed the fundraising websites donating money.
Right.
You've got other people that are celebrating as if they had just won a huge victory. But what do you think should happen? What do you think is best for the country in the wake of all of
Mike,
this?
First of all, our allegiance as voters, whether you're Republican or Democrat, should never be to the party, and it should not be to an individual. It should be to the Constitution and to the people in this country. That's where your allegiance should be. And anytime it becomes all about one person, I think that's a mistake.
On both sides.
On both sides, absolutely. And right now, I mean, a lot of people, almost everybody I talk to is like, we have a country of 500 million people, and these two are the best we can come up with? Look, yesterday, when I saw what happened, I had a flood of different emotions. First of all, Barry Markson, who did the legal analysis, correctly said that New York would not count it a felony for fraudulent filing of business papers, whatever the case may be. The worst it would be, generally speaking, would be a misdemeanor. And there's a statute of limitations. Do I have some concern about that overreach? That's going to be played out, and that's probably, as Barry said, going to be the main focus of any kind of an appeal.
And isn't it then, and I hate to interrupt you, but let me just to go on that point. Isn't it possible that both are true, that the former president is guilty of doing things wrong, and that this is a political witch hunt?
Yes, it is possible that that they overreached in New York. But did he falsify business records? Look, those folks on the jury, and by the way, I'm going to say what we talked about yesterday. When you pick a jury, the attorneys on both sides decide who the jurors are going to be. And they each have veto power over certain jurists. The fact that this came down with a unanimous decision, I think that sends a pretty strong message.
Do you think there's any truth to, and you would know more about this than I do, do you think there is any truth to the accusation from the Trump side that this was rigged by the instructions by the judge and the way the judge handled the case?
You know what? Trump said the election was rigged. This was rigged. Anytime it doesn't go his way, it's rigged. Look, I wasn't there. I don't know how the judge instructed the jury on everything. If I was there and saw everything that the jury could say, I could probably say a lot more forcefully right now whether it was fair or whether it wasn't. I don't know, Mike.
But to be clear, and I want to just to clarify, because I got to take a break, and you're going to be with me one more second, right? To be clear, you have been a Trump supporter and a Trump voter. It's not like you have been someone against Trump.
No. I voted for him. I voted for him in the last two elections.
You played golf with him. I mean, you've actually spent time with him.
I voted for him in the last two elections, but I think there gets to be a point, and we can talk more about this later, but you look at some of the people in our history, in the United States history, who did certain things when they faced similar obstacles. And three that I want the listeners to maybe think about, because I'm going to talk about them. One was Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon wasn't about to be deposed or impeached because of a third-rate burglary. It was because of the cover-up. And Richard Nixon, instead of putting the country through that, he probably would have been victorious in the Senate, would have been impeached by the House like both Clinton and Trump were, would have probably not risen to the threshold of being voted out. But yet he didn't want to put the country through that. He did the statesman-like thing, and he stepped aside. The same thing with Tom DeLay, who I loved, one of the greatest Republican leaders I've ever met in my life. And Tom DeLay was accused of some financial crimes with his campaign. And he stepped aside. He said, you know what, I'm not going to put the country through it. He was convicted, and later it was overturned, and he was exonerated. And one last one is a really good friend of mine. We served in the Congress together, in the House together, John Ensign. Very similar circumstances. He tried to hide an affair and tried to buy some people off. And there was an ethics complaint made against him in the Senate. And rather than put the country through it, he stepped aside.
You were alluding to the fact when we went to commercial break, you had gone down a list of people that had been in trouble, whether they were ultimately found guilty or not or exonerated. When the crisis happened, they stepped aside. So
because they wanted what was the best for the country, and they didn't need the distraction away from all the important issues that we're facing as a nation.
So do you believe that former President Trump would be doing a service to the country by stepping away?
I think he would be a statesman if he stepped aside. And then we had a brokered convention.
So then let's look at the other side of that. Let me ask you, do you also believe that it would be President Biden being a statesman in pardoning Donald Trump?
Well, who knows if Biden's going to be president.
But, I mean, do you think that would be...
The president cannot pardon a state conviction. Only a federal conviction, from what I'm understanding.
So, but do you think that the reason why I'm asking that is, would there be a way to put this to bed on either side?
You know what? That would probably be a really magnanimous gesture, and one that would probably bring a lot of healing across the country. So, you know, I think it's actually a really provocative idea. Yeah.
So then let's go a step further, because this is the question for you, and the reason why I started with how many years you've been involved.
Right.
What would you say then to Trump loyalists that believe in order to save the country, you've got to fight what is a rigged system. But where do Trump voters go? Where do Trump voters go if he steps down?
So the issues that face us as a country, and you and I have talked about them. You know, the spending in Washington, D.C., which, by the way, he didn't do much to curb. And I believe that if we face a serious existential threat, it's the spending. It's killing us as a nation, and it's the biggest reason for the inflation that we're facing right now. And the wall, the border, all of those things. The drilling gas. For gas back in America, the fracking, all those things need to be back on the table again, and they're far bigger than one person. And so my belief is that my wife is famous for always saying, vote for the platform. It's not the individual you're talking about, vote for the platform. And I think that's what we need to focus on, is getting back to the issues. And I don't know that we can get there. Everything is so distracted right now. He should use all of his energy and focus on, these trials. This was the easiest one. And I think most of the legal analysts out there that have looked at these things, this was the least of the charges that have been brought against him. And I think he should fight it with everything that he's got. And if he believes it's a rigged system, he should bring every attorney the best of the attorneys to go and fight for him. And he should fight that fight in the courts, and then not be distracted from the important job that a president has to do.
Matt Salmon is joining us. Matt Salmon, 2 times he's been a member of the United States House of Representatives, started the Freedom Caucus. He also has been a gubernatorial candidate here in the state of Arizona and been involved in Arizona politics for how many years?
Oh, gosh, since I was a state senator when I was 32.
Okay.
And I'm 66 now.
Okay. All right, so that's quite a time. So you've been involved a long time. In wrestling with this, which is why I wanted to talk to you about this, where do those voters go? There are people out there that believe this is rigged. They genuinely believe that this was a railroad job and that it should be fought. But other than that, I agree with you. In the end, I am more concerned about the nation than I am about any individual.
Yeah.
So then those voters, though, who do they turn to? A brokered convention is not a very settling idea. Who do they turn to? Is there a candidate out there? Is there somebody that suspended their campaign that jumps back in the race?
Look, I've always been a real big fan of Ron DeSantis. And I'm not doing this on Ron DeSantis' behalf. And I don't think Trump's going to care at all what I'm suggesting.
Right.
But I think there's probably a lot more people that need to stand up and speak truth to power and say, let's focus on the needs of the country. Well, how did Spock put it in Star Trek? The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
So this is what is I've been thinking about this since you and I talked about it yesterday, because I have so many friends out there that are such good people that really believe that the only way that the country is going to be saved is if Donald Trump fights this, in spite of the conviction, wins the White House, and then that is going to show that you're not going to be able to railroad somebody out of office. And I'm going to go back to it. What do you say to those genuine people that you would know and like? What do you say to them about that prospect?
Well, I'm not sure, what the polling numbers are going to show since the convictions happened. The most important thing for me is that we have a leader in the White House who respects the Constitution, who understands that we've got to fix the problems that we just talked about, and make sure that the bureaucracies there in Washington, D.C. have integrity.
So this is what I wrestle with. What do we do if it doesn't change? If it's Joe Biden for the Democrats, it is Donald Trump for the Republicans, and RFK Jr. is the independent candidate. What do those voters do?
I think that when it comes to Joe Biden, I think the Democrat Party would be really wise to have a brokered convention as well. I think they'd be really wise to have a brokered convention. I think he's about as weak of an incumbent, and that's justified by the poll numbers. I don't think anybody's had a lower approval rating in the history of America than Joe Biden does right now. But ultimately, I think that that's a decision everybody's going to have to face for themselves. I'm wrestling with it. I can't vote for Joe Biden.
Hey, listen, Matt, I always appreciate your honesty and your candor. It means a lot. I know it comes from experience as well.
Thanks a lot.
All right, that's Matt Salmon joining us for a few moments.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Tap to watch the first season of Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast. You can also click the button in the middle to subscribe.